And violence in any shape and form, particularly against our darlings, cannot be tolerated and is unacceptable. And so I'm happy to join in the voices that decry this practice and despicable act. And I want all to know that I am firmly behind and support the efforts of those who speak out against violence, particularly domestic violence, against our children and our women. So again, congratulations to the Zonta Club. I mean, I couldn't go home unless I said something. I left home this morning being reminded that today is, gender violence, an end of it. And let's hopefully, from the day on, more men will be speaking about it. More men will be shaming other men for their acts and conduct. And yes, Marco City, we have to be careful with our language. We become so used, just as, as some words have now been deemed to be unacceptable, which we found acceptable. We have to understand that some words are just not acceptable anymore, even in jest, even in telling our jokes. We need to be careful in our language because words do convey meanings that sometimes are unintended, but it does have the unintended consequence that could lead to violence. And so with that, congratulations, and let us join our voices to those that support the move against domestic violence.
Thank you, honorable members. I'd like to have a document laid on the table. It is a report from the Auditor General, and it reads, Report of the Auditor General for the year ending June 30th, 2019. Order that the document do lie on the table. We'll now go to the order of business. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Tall Pines.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the table of this House the following: the Quarantine SARS-CoV-2 Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Industries Encouragement Approved Product, the Bread Bar Company Limited, Order 2021, the Price Control General Amendment Number 8, Regulations 2021.
Order that the document be brought up. That the documents do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers. Statements and communications by ministers. Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Senate. Is this a message? The Honorable Senate acquaints the Honorable House of Assembly that they have agreed to the following resolution, accompanying message number 1 from the Honorable House of Assembly dated 4th of November 2021. Resolved that a humble address be presented to His Excellency the Governor General, thanking him for his most gracious speech at the opening of Parliament. Order that the document do lie on the table. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat and new writs, presentations of petitions, presentations of reports of committees, adoption of reports of committees, first reading of bills, second reading and committal of bills. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Madam Speaker, I rise the second reading of the following bills that relates to the supplementary budget. Which we propose to deal with as a compendium as it relates to the supplementary budget of expenditures and revenues that were laid when I last spoke in this House. So I move, firstly, for a bill for an act for the appropriation of further diverse sums of money for and towards deferring the expenses of the government of the Commonwealth of Bahamas during the fiscal year commencing 1st of July 2021 and ending on the 30th of June 2022. It is also proposed as the compendium a bill. And I will, in my contribution, Madam Speaker, speak to the bill for the capital expenditures and to a bill for the act to amend the Value Added Tax Act. Madam Speaker, I stand to open the debate on the supplementary budget for the year 2021-2022. It lays, Madam Speaker, the foundation for the launch of a new vision and a new direction for our beloved country. In life, the way in which you begin usually determines the way in which you will finish. When building a home, great attention must be paid to ensuring a sturdy foundation is laid to ensure that the home does not collapse when strong winds blow. It must be able to sustain headwinds. In education, a strong foundation in the basics, especially in literacy and numeracy, is necessary in the early years to ensure success later in high school or university. In governance, it is important to establish a strong foundation from day one to ensure successful completion of the government's mandate in later years. Madam Speaker, I am confident that in this supplementary budget, the first budget of my administration, we are starting off on the right foot by laying the strong foundation the country needs to guide us over the next 5 years. This budget begins to address the immediate need to get the economy up and running again and sets the groundwork for a plan for fiscal recovery and economic growth that the country so badly needs. This is no small feat. Even though the country has breathed a collective sigh of relief since the change of government on September 17th, we are not out of the shadows yet of the many crises which we inherited. The health crisis, during which hundreds of Bahamians have died, Many more have been hospitalized, and thousands more have suffered from infection. The economic crisis, which was exacerbated by the health crisis, during which many Bahamians lost steady employment and fell out of the middle class. The post-Dorian crisis, in which time seemed to stand still for the victims, who saw little or no progress made on their behalf over a period of 2 years. And the crisis of governance, during which incompetence, a lack of transparency, and a lack of compassion were the hallmarks of the day. The challenge before us as a country is to address these multiple crises while at the same time digging ourselves out of the very deep fiscal hole. And so, this budget seeks to stabilize our country's finances while also providing some relief for the Bahamian people. The already poor state of the economy at the beginning of the pandemic, coupled with the blunt force use of lockdowns by the previous administration, made an already bad situation much, much worse. With this new plan and vision, Madam Speaker, to restore our country, this supplementary budget is designed to achieve 3 major goals. It provides much needed relief to the Bahamian people. It reallocates funding to match the ministerial portfolios of the government. And it provides funding for critical expenditures which were neglected by the previous administration. It is also important to point out that we are accomplishing these objectives while not adding a single additional dollar to the national debt that was forecast in the original budget table in May. In fact, this supplementary budget begins the process of reducing the extraordinary levels of borrowing seen under the former administration by reducing the government's projected deficit for the fiscal year. I want to repeat that. We intend to take care of people and reduce the deficit at the same time. This balanced approach of meeting the needs of the Bahamian people while practicing fiscal discipline reflects the competent and compassionate approach we are bringing to governing during these very difficult times. Our supplementary budget recognizes there is an urgent need for change in this country that cannot wait for the next fiscal cycle. The people have called for a change in vision and a change in priorities. They have called for a compassionate, respectful, and focused government. With this budget, we are establishing the solid foundation that will allow us to roll out our transformational agenda and set the course for a new direction for our nation. It is a new day. Madam Speaker, over my career in politics, I've earned many titles. Leader of the opposition, minister, and now prime minister. But the one that I hold most dear to me is member of parliament. So to the people of Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador, who have placed their trust in me as their representative in this honorable house, I wish to express my warmest gratitude. I will always remain connected to and informed by their realities on the ground. It is in fact because of my conversations with my constituents, hearing about their hopes and dreams, as well as their struggles and challenges, that I am able to confidently speak on their behalf. My words and my priorities are grounded in their experiences and perspectives. Under my watch, development will truly be national in scale. This is as true for New Providence as it is for Grand Bahama and Abaco. It is equally true for the islands of Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. Real national development ensures that the challenges in every inhabited island of the Bahamas and the issues in all communities are incorporated into a strategic development plan. My people, my constituents, thank you for this opportunity to represent and serve you once again. Before I go further, I wish to congratulate the member for Marco City on obtaining his party support to represent them as the new leader of the Free National Movement and the leader of the official opposition. Another Cat Islander. As a senior member of the previous administration's cabinet, entrusted with a number of portfolios, I'm sure you would have benefited from the wisdom, counsel, and guidance of your former leader, the member for Kalani, with whom you shared such a close and loyal bond. It must be very reassuring for him that the member of Kalani, for you, has chosen to remain in this honorable house, ever watchful and close at hand to help you defend the track record of the previous administration. Of course, you serve as senator. I guess, and you were selected by the member for Kalani as well to serve as senator. And you no doubt will benefit from the experience for having served there as well. I noticed that you mentioned that you had Kalani on speed dial. So Bahamians have been advised, some might say warned, that you will be in touch regularly. I wish you well. I wish you well in your endeavors. Madam Speaker, in today's world, with increased cross-border trade, with increasing impacts of global warming, our small country faces substantial risks and challenges. Our islands have never fully recovered from the destruction wrought, and I go back as far as Hurricanes Joaquin, Matthew, and Irma. While recovering from its disaster, we were faced with the unprecedented levels of damage from Hurricane Dorian to islands in the north. And then, of course, came a new virus and the COVID-19 pandemic. It is expected that there would be hardships after weathering storms of this magnitude. But the damage done was intensified and prolonged by the incompetent and lackluster response of the previous administration. They not only failed the people of Abaco, Grand Bahama, Long Island, Ackless, Ragged Island during and after the storms, they failed the entire nation with their bungled ad hoc policies, their lack of transparency, unwillingness to respond to inquiries and questions, and failure to accurately present the state of the nation's finances to the Bahamian people reflected a double dose of arrogance and incompetence that retarded growth and set our nation back many years. Yes. We are still trying to determine the detail and extent of what it is they were so keen to hide. We saw firsthand their unwillingness to comply with the conditions of the IMF's loan facility to reveal who exactly they gave the borrowed funds to. Why was it so important to keep the facts from the Bahamian people? We have seen over the past 4.5 years how they mishandled the BPL rate reduction bond to the point that it is no longer a feasible financing strategy or cost reduction measure for the Bahamian people. We have seen the unsustainable borrowings of foreign currency over the past 3 years. In the most recent fiscal year, foreign currency loans made up 64%, almost 2/3 of government borrowings. Meanwhile, domestic financial institutions who have the capacity to support government debt issuances were underutilized. Why burden the Bahamian people with such expensive borrowings? Their approach to debt management and fiscal management was reckless and threaten to harm the long-term prospects of this nation. We are still awaiting the results of a financial report giving a detailed account of the government's current fiscal position. This review, which is being conducted by a top accounting firm, is almost complete. It will help us to clear up any discrepancies and gain a true understanding of where we are in terms of unpaid, unbudgeted, and contingent liabilities of the government. Madam Speaker, in 2020, the Bahamas experienced a significant shrinkage of real GDP. In fact, it is estimated that the real GDP, or output, contracted by 14.5%. This contraction occurred at the same time as the previous administration's historic levels of borrowing, which took the nation to a never-before-seen debt-to-GDP ratio of over 100%. The erosion of our economic and fiscal health eventually culminated in Moody's most recent downgrade in September of our sovereign credit rating from BA2 to BA3. Similarly, on November 12, 2021, the rating agency Standard & Poor's also issued a downgrade of our sovereign credit rating from BB- to B+. In its statement, the rationale for the downgrade was owed to the fact that, and I quote, the debt burden has climbed almost $2.4 billion in the past 2 fiscal years, and interest costs now represent about 21% of budgetary expenses. Furthermore, the Bahamas is exposed to financing risks as it seeks to fund large deficits and refinance existing debt. Close quote. Exceptional levels of borrowing, high and unsustainable deficit levels, and no plan to rectify this crisis. This is the economy that we have inherited. What makes the situation truly infuriating is that we still struggle to see what happened to all this expensive borrowed money. There certainly is not a single major road, school, or hospital to show for it. Where did all the billions of dollars go? We are determined to find out, and when we do, we'll certainly let the Bahamian people know. However, thankfully, a new day is here. So, Madam Speaker, let us look forward. New COVID-19 cases are down. COVID-19 hospitalizations have declined. Our U.S. travel advisory has improved from a level of 4 to a level of 3. And economic projections indicate our economy is on the way up. All of this, yet, with reports of a new, possibly more transmissible COVID variant, we are far from complacent. Everyone is tired of COVID, but unfortunately, both governments and families need to remain vigilant and engage in this battle against the virus. Yes. There's no single perfect protection against COVID, so we should all take multiple steps to protect ourselves. And remember that when we are careful, we are also protecting our friends, our families, our co-workers, and our communities. Let's hold our gatherings outside instead of inside whenever possible, because the virus is airborne and can linger in the air for hours in poorly ventilated indoor rooms. If you have to be in a crowded indoor space, wear 2 masks or a medical grade mask. I urge everyone to listen to doctors and medical experts from around the world and get vaccinated.
Yes.
I'm very pleased to announce that for the first time during this pandemic, our country now has enough vaccines for all Bahamians who choose to take advantage of this life-saving inoculation. This is an enormous relief. The scientific community around the world is at work studying the new variant I just talked about. It is named Omicron, and we will be sharing updates with the Bahamians as we learn more about this virus. This new variant was first identified in Botswana and South Africa, and the world owes to scientists and public health officials there a debt of gratitude for moving so quickly to share their data. Because of their transparency and their early warning, governments can act now, even with incomplete information. Thus, along with many other countries, we have imposed temporary restrictions on travelers from multiple African countries. Individuals who are not ordinarily resident in the Bahamas, who have traveled to, through, or from those countries in the last 14 days will not be allowed entry into the Bahamas at this time. Citizens and permanent residents who have traveled to these countries may be permitted entry but will be required to quarantine for 14 days. This is not perfect protection. The variant has been identified in several other countries as well. The idea is to buy some time until we have more clarity. We just don't have enough clinical data to know with confidence yet how transmissible the new variant is or whether it induces more severe disease. We have to stay alert, stay flexible, and continue to combat the Delta strain, which is still circulating and remains a threat. Madam Speaker, despite these difficult times, there are reasons to be optimistic. Real GDP is expected to return to positive growth this year to 2%, and it is expected to peak to 8% in 2022. To keep the nation headed in a positive direction, to take advantage of the rebounding of the Bahamian economy, we must take immediate action to foster and sustain stronger economic growth. Madam Speaker, there's no denying we face difficult times. It is not breaking news to anyone that our country is in the need of a turnaround. But I did not become Prime Minister because I thought the job would be easy. And it is precisely because of the immense difficulty before us that I put together a team of leaders and innovators ready to deliver for the Bahamian people from day one. In 10 weeks, we have achieved significant progress by assembling a first-rate cabinet, constituting critical ministries to aid in our recovery, appointing board members and senators, and filling key positions with skilled, experienced Bahamians who will prove valuable in the fulfillment of our agenda. You will note that we have filled many of our key roles with professionals who represent the best in our country, including putting many young people and Bahamian women in leadership roles at various agencies. I'm extremely proud that many key positions are now held by those who are the youngest ever appointed to some of these roles. When we said we believe in young Bahamians, we meant it. We know they will bring new energy and a strong commitment to building a better Bahamas to the work ahead. It is indeed a new day.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, we haven't been in office that long, but we have started to have an impact already. There was a time when the members opposite said, remember? They said that free testing was impossible in the Bahamas. That's what they said. They said it, and I quote, "The PLP lives in the Alice in Wonderland of fantasies." That's what they said. Yet, Within weeks of the election, under the leadership of Dr. Michael Dowell. Now that's the real doctor. The Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health has rolled out a pilot program for free testing that is currently being expanded throughout the Bahamas. What the side opposite said was fantasy, we are making a reality.
Yes, sir.
The pilot program has been in Inagua, Bimini, the Berry Islands, and North Eleuthera. The Minister of Health and his team are finalizing the plan for nationwide free testing. That is the power of a people-oriented and solutions-focused government. We don't allow the enormity of a problem to define our willingness to solve it. Now, Bahamians are better protected as a result of these efforts. The data collected is greatly aiding our public health officials as they identify and contain outbreaks. We have reopened and expanded the hours of businesses that were unjustifiably closed for some 21 months, getting people back to work and allowing these small business owners to take care of their families again. The recreational watercraft industry recently joined the list of Bahamian businesses that have reopened. After 21 months, our straw market is open. And when I visited there last week, I saw for myself the expressions of joy and relief on the faces of vendors. What a joy for me to see. On November 13th, we ended the emergency orders and the national curfew, which were replaced by a comprehensive public health legislation rules. No more will decisions be made by a competent authority of one. If we need to adjust our health protocols, we'll do so based on the science and the data and after consultation. Our decision making will be rational and transparent. And when changes are needed to be made, it will be done so here in Parliament, where they can be explained and debated. Whenever the laws seem to be enforced unfairly, wherever the laws seem to be enforced unfairly, we will make adjustments to ensure that all Bahamians are playing by the same rules, because we believe in fairness, not favoritism. In other words, it is a new day. Madam Speaker, we said that the Bahamas will play a leading role in the global discussion on climate change. Given the terrible consequences that we have already experienced, during my address to the UN and then later at COP26, the nation took its first steps towards playing a more active role in speaking to the urgency of corrective action on climate change. We intend to fully participate in the crafting of policies to save the world from the brink of a climate-generated disaster. As you can see, we have been busy, but we are just getting started. Mr. Speaker, campaigns are intense, 24/7 endeavors. I remember well that the previous government took a very long vacation at the start of their term in 2017. We did not. However, we had no choice. There was no time for us to delay in aligning the government's budget with our vision for national development and the big changes the Bahamian people voted for. We are at a critical juncture. None of the important choices we face are easy ones. As with all difficult choices, there's always a trade-off. No matter which choice is made, we do not live in an ideal world, and there are no perfect choices. Our priority was focusing on the health crisis while restoring the fiscal health of the nation, while responding as well to the needs of the people. This required the government to strike a balance between the necessary fiscal reforms and bringing immediate relief to the most vulnerable. In the most recent IMF technical report, the scenarios recommended for consideration included this one: raising the overall VAT rate to 15%, while keeping the existing VAT exemptions and leaving in place the scenario where the government was paying VAT for wealthy foreign companies. I want the Bahamian people to hear me very clearly. When we came to office, the analysis performed by the IMF indicated that if the government didn't change its VAT structure, VAT would have to be raised to 15%. Imagine that. Now, I know you all remember that the member for Kalani told the Bahamian people, you're right, Engliston, member for Kalani told the Bahamian people that he went to election 8 months early because the country faced headwinds and tough decisions. We said at the time that he wanted Bahamians to vote before he raised their taxes. And this major tax increase appears to be what he had in mind. Raising VAT to 15% would have turned headwinds into a hurricane. Raising VAT to 15% would have been just a tough decision. Right? It wouldn't have just been a tough decision. It would have been a terrible decision that would have plunged our economy into a downward spiral past the point of no return.
Yeah.
Certainly that's your view.
Point of order? Point of order, okay.
Madam Speaker.
Stop my clock.
Madam Speaker, the member said.
Honourable member, are you on a point of order?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
The member said that we had intentions of raising VAT. I want to say categorically there was no consideration at all on the FNM's agenda of raising any VAT.
Well, first of all, Madam Speaker, what I said is that the IMF told them that they need to do something with the VAT regime, and they would need to raise taxes to 15%. Now, they never told us that during the course of the campaign. But, you know, there are a lot of flies on walls. And they are very busy, and they fly around a lot. And sometimes they land on the wrong wall. And guess what? Flies could talk too. So what I'm saying, what I said, Mr. Speaker, is that he talked about tough decisions having to be made after the elections. And I'm saying is that we kept telling the Bahamian people that they intended, we said, it was our belief. No, listen to me. I am saying it was our belief that they were going to raise tax. I am now pointing out that there's a basis for that belief. Yes. And the basis for that belief was the IMF recommending to them to raise it to 15%. Now, what they intend to do or not is another matter, because the Bahamian people took care of that. That intention was taken care of by the Bahamian people. But what we point out is that is what was being recommended, right? And you were, yeah. But you spoke about headwinds, and you talk about tough decisions. And I'm saying, if you thought about headwinds in respect to 15% increase, that ain't no headwind. That would have been a hurricane. That would have been a hurricane. And talking about tough decision, that would not have been a tough decision. That would have been a terrible decision. That would have plunged our economy in a downward spiral, and I say to a point perhaps of no return. So I just talking about, you know, your headwinds, which is hurricane. Talk about your tough decision, which would have been a terrible decision. So that's all I'm talking about. So, but thankfully, the Bahamian people took care of that for us. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, we decided to take another approach, a more progressive and productive path, and broaden the tax base, which includes streamlining the tax code for efficiency and easier enforcement. Broadening the tax base also means that we now have the room to lower the VAT rate to 10%, a reduction that many Bahamians were eagerly awaiting. Once again, there were those who said that this was a promise that couldn't be kept. They said that we would never be able to deliver a VAT reduction for the Bahamian people. The Bahamian people knew prior government lacked both the will and the skill necessary to navigate us out of these perilous times. But here we are, 2 months into a 5-year term, and what they deemed impossible, my government has made possible. Madam Speaker, we looked at the fiscal reality before us and realized that there was simply no way that increasing the VAT rate to 15% just to keep a few exemptions and for the government to pay VAT for wealthy foreign companies was not a good idea. As Bahamians say, we just couldn't make it make sense, Madam Speaker. The IMF review of the Bahamian tax system implemented by the previous administration described the kind of exemption-riddled VAT regime with the government paying VAT for wealthy foreign companies as reducing efficiency. This is how the IMF described it, Madam Speaker. Reduce efficiency, lowering revenue, and increasing administrative and compliance costs. To retain that approach would have been counterproductive and wrong. Had to change the approach. Making matters worse, that same report indicated that exemption and zero ratings are and I quote, an inefficient way of achieving redistribution objectives, which is another way of saying that paying VAT for rich foreign companies on select items is detrimental to working class and low-income households. You know, it's interesting. The former member for Finance was on the news. He was in the news the other day, proudly proclaiming they ignored the experts in setting their VAT policy. But, Madam Speaker, ignoring experts in order to implement a less efficient, more costly system that brings in less revenue is nothing to boast about. We have been very intentional with our VAT reforms. The proposed bill does not reimpose VAT on home insurance, nor does it impose VAT on rental of non-commercial properties. What the proposed bill does is make the purchase of fuel for private planes a VAT expense, VATable. That was not the case under the previous administration. They don't like to talk about how they made the government pay the VAT on fuel for private planes. VAT was originally exempt on transshipment services, which means they didn't have to pay VAT, and the governments therefore didn't have to refund it. That is the international standard. The previous administration changed this treatment so the government had to give a refund on services that they did not generate VAT in the first place for. In essence, Madam Speaker, the government had to pay the VAT on these transshipment services. These foreign companies experienced a windfall of millions and millions of dollars on the backs of Bahamian families and companies. This was a classic move by the previous administration. Tax breaks for themselves, their wealthy supporters, and favored foreigners. Tax increases on the backs of ordinary Bahamians. That's their move, classic. Stranger still was the decision to pay refunds for the period during which these services providers were not eligible. These refunds were casually put into the budget as prior year arrears. So here you had the spectacle of the government amending the VAT legislation to give refunds to non-Bahamian companies with billions of dollars under the guise of an unpaid bill left by a PLP administration. This is indefensible, an absolute disgrace. Let me just, so that I'll refer you all to some reports that you could look at. We don't shoot from the hips. This is not ad hoc. right? A team of experts at the University of the Bahamas ran various simulations of VAT models and the projected impact of each as a part of the Bahamas Recovery and Sustainable Growth Project. In their simulations, various VAT rates were modeled, including an increase to 14%, not 15%, while retaining existing exemptions, as well as a 10% VAT rate with limited exemptions and not paying VAT for wealthy transshipment companies. Across the board, this 10% rate was the only rate that sustained government revenues while showing positive projections related to economic growth, employment, and income inequality. Only the 10% rate, with the broad removal of zero-rated items, achieved this result. This is the experts at the UB's findings. In our approach, we are sensitive to the needs of the Bahamian people. For the special economic zones still in recovery from Hurricane Dorian, and for low-income homes with minimal electricity bills, VAT exemptions will be retained. This decision may result in minimal losses in VAT revenues, but this administration believes it is fruitless to have large bank accounts while our people are starving. My grandfather used to say, why have your barn full of produce when your child get into school hungry? This is what we meant by striking the right balance. Yes, we understand that there is a need to address government's fiscal situation, and we are doing that. But we also have to take care of our people.
Yes.
I want the Bahamian people to know that our VAT decisions are supported by data, research, and consultations with local and global experts. We considered every scenario possible, and at the end of our research and consultations, we were confident that we were making the right choice. So those who seek to mischaracterize our decision-making know that there are independent experts at UB, within the public service, and internationally, whose data-backed work you'll likewise be attempting to mischaracterize. Madam Speaker, there are those out there who want the Bahamian people to take a very narrow view of the supplementary budget. They feel that they have successfully muddied the waters on the benefits of what we are doing by directing the public's focus to just a few items. Meanwhile, they are ignoring the plethora of data and research backing everything that we do. In recognition of this fact, my administration began crafting policies to bring immediate, targeted relief to the Bahamian people. We have increased recurrent expenditure by $53,291,143, with most of this increase coming in the Ministry of Public Service, whose budget has been increased by $19,620,583 to fund pensions and gratuities for retired civil servants. We are taking care of our retirees. We are also bringing annual incremental increases back for civil servants. These increments were put on hold by the former administration, even as they awarded handsome contracts to their well-connected friends.
To give themselves added perks.
The result was that even if the amount paid each year was the same, annual inflation was eating into the salaries of civil servants. I will not allow that to happen under this administration. We will look out, and we look out for civil servants. The budget of the Ministry of Finance has been increased by $31,134,550, of which $30 million is allocated to the extension of the unemployment benefit program. Note that we are not just extending the unemployment program until the end of the year, we are also putting in place a $500 lump sum payment that will be sent out just in time for Christmas. So in this budget, we have an across-the-board decrease. We have an across-the-board decrease in VAT based on international best practices, and a return to the payment of annual increments for thousands of civil servants. We have the extension of the unemployment program and a lump sum payment of $500 to current beneficiaries. We have an increase to pensions at every payout level and the payment of old gratuities. I challenge any objective observer to listen to this list and form an honest opinion about whether our policies represent a relief to the Bahamian people. The naysayers will try to direct your attention to a narrow list of hand-picked issues. They are choosing to ignore the abundance of great things for the Bahamian people in this supplementary budget. Of course, there are certain trade-offs that had to be made for this relief budget to be made a reality. But we have done the groundwork. We have consulted widely. And we are confident that the budget before us today will empower the Bahamian people. And if anyone opposite disagrees with that, I'll direct them to ask the civil servants about their increments. I'll ask the government employees about the promotions that are being rolled out. Ask pensioners if they are benefiting from the increase in their pensions. Ask the unemployed about the lump sum payments and extension of their benefits. They will let you know. The net impact of this budget should be rightly viewed in its totality, considering the VAT reduction in the context of the many targeted forms of relief, as well as the many items that reduction can be applied to. We're not talking about a list of 22 items here. We're talking about a reduction to every good and every service Bahamians pay for on a daily basis. Not just 22 items. The thousands of items in the grocery store are not just 22. We're talking items like vehicles, plane tickets, utility bills, car insurance, spending money in the restaurants, fast food, alcohol, and the list goes on. Not just 22 items. So, Madam Speaker, as I indicated, addressing the government's financial issues is a major priority of this supplemental budget. The capital expenditure budget has been reduced by $54,230,383. The agency with the biggest reduction is the Ministry of Health, with a net reduction of $14 million. What we have done is move the $19 million that was allocated for the Rand Hospital in anticipation of major works taking place in the next fiscal year. It ain't gonna be it can't happen this year. So it doesn't need to have that in your budget now. We have, in the short term though, put in place the $5 million for hospital repairs and maintenance for this fiscal year.
Yes.
We have also reduced the Ministry of Finance's capital budget by $20,969,998. The highlights of this decrease include over $9,169,998 for IDB capital projects, $4 million for the allocation of the development of the Prospect Ridge subdivision, and $5 million for small business development. The Minister of Transport and Housing, the member for Elizabeth, Joette Colby Davis, has already put into the public domain the facts with respect to Prospect Ridge development. So there's no need to discuss this matter further by me, except at some point, the member of Kalani will have to explain how he came up with the price for these lots when there was no analysis done for the cost of the infrastructure. Our initial review of the project revealed that the development costs the Bahamian people approximately $15 million. Right? And the collective price of the lots do not cover the estimated cost of the infrastructure. Perhaps Prospect Ridge was merely a distraction or a campaign ploy.
That's right.
Without a real or sincere intention to see it through. It is difficult otherwise to understand the basic lack of analysis and cost projections. Madam Speaker, the Inter-American Development Bank is the country's #1 development partner. It is therefore disappointing to inherit a portfolio of IDB-funded projects where the achievement of the developmental objectives are severely challenged without radical action. In the case of both the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Finance, and I could add the Ministry of Health, budget allocations to support IDB-funded activities have been reduced, as there's no likelihood that the expenditures could be incurred before the end of this fiscal year. The supplementary budget also reduces the amount of funding expected from the IDB in this fiscal period. The reduction of the allocation for small business development in the Ministry of Finance budget has been explained by the technical office of the ministry. But for clarity, I'll restate the position here. This administration is firmly committed to small business development. I remind this House that the Bahamas Development Bank, the Venture Capital Fund, and the Small Business Development Center were all established by PLP administration. So that is our commitment and stays there, right? Sustainable small business development requires a supportive environment. The SBDC was designed to assist in providing such an environment. During the pandemic, Bahamian ingenuity took hold at the SBDC, and through an army of private lenders, it was able to provide support to the small business community. This government is interested in seeing this model continue in a structured manner, and at the same time, not have the SBDC duplicate the Bahamas Development Bank's efforts by engaging in direct lending. Madam Speaker, on the revenue side, we have taken a very conservative approach. We have adopted the existing revenue estimates for the remainder of the fiscal year and boosted them by only $92 million more than forecasted. The $92 million simply recognizes the actual revenue above forecast that was recorded in the first quarter of this fiscal year. We have made no adjustment for the ending of the emergency orders, the reestablishment of the Revenue Enhancement Unit, or the continuation of the vaccination program. I note, however, that all of these things are revenue positives. Madam Speaker, we have taken this approach because we are cognizant of the fiscal risks that we face. The $1 billion difference in liabilities discovered upon taking office is perhaps the most visible risk, but it is not the only fiscal risk before us. We are awaiting the final report from a private sector accounting firm on this matter, but I think I should be clear on a few things. The methodology used to derive this number is the same methodology which should have been used in the pre-election report, as specified in the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Hopefully, the accountant's report will shed light on why this methodology was not used in the pre-election report. The $1 billion figure contains liabilities that were known and immediately payable. For example, there was the underfunding of pensions and gratuities for civil servants, which have now been incorporated into the supplementary budget. It also contains debt maturities for which no refinancing arrangements have been made as of the 30th of September 2021. This would include the $246 million loan assumed by the government on behalf of BPL and the $167 million promissory note issued by Resolve for the purchase of distressed assets of the Bank of the Bahamas. I can, at this time, say comfortably that refinancing arrangements for those obligations have now been put in place. Madam Speaker, the $1 billion figure also includes contracts for which no funding was provided in the May budget. This includes over $100 million in contracts executed by the Ministry of Works for which no funding was provided. A significant portion of the $1 billion relates to contingent liabilities related to the government's breach of contracts. But this is not the lion's share of the amount identified. Rather, the lion's share identified relates to obligations known to the government that was simply ignored in a seemingly violation of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. This is an important distinction which may have escaped some who have made simplistic and disingenuous public comments about the comparison of apples and oranges. Madam Speaker, I'd be remiss if I do not speak about the Bahamas Public Parks and Beaches Authority. In 2021, the 2021-22 fiscal year, it had been approved a budget of $15.2 million. Beaches and Parks, approved budget. The Parliament voted $15.2 million. After contingencies, its total budget was around $28 million, an increase of 86% against budget, an increase that coincided with electioneering. I am now told that because of new contracts issued in the months of July, August, and September of this year, the projected expenditure of the authority for this fiscal year is $37 million from 15. That's an increase of almost 150% against the budgeted amount, and in dollars, it is an increase of $22 million. Right now, recalling now, Parliament only authorized $15.2 million. Now, I want that to sink in for a moment. I also want it to sink in that a number. I also want to sink in that a number of these contracts were awarded to clean middle and high-end subdivisions like Blair and West Ridge, just to name a few. The member for St. Barnabas will undoubtedly have a lot of explaining to do. As a result of this reckless and irresponsible behavior by the member as of September 30th, 2021, after only 4 months into this fiscal budget, that means you have 8 more months left. All right? After 4 months, the authority had already utilized more than 60% of its budget for the entire year. I remind you, like I say, 8 months still remains. And guess what? The roadside contracts in Kalani had risen to almost 400,000 and more. Yeah. In that short, look now, I talk about these 3 months, 400,000.
Oh, wow.
I suppose that, none of us should be, this shouldn't be surprising when we remember that 20 million on sidewalks at the height of the pandemic. That's what they're spending. When hospitals were collapsing and Bahamians were homeless and hungry. Even so, the truth of it all will be revealed.
Members?
Yeah. Even so, the truth of it all will be revealed, and they will be held to account for their reckless decisions made for the short-term political benefit at the expense of the country. Madam Speaker, I've highlighted these numbers to demonstrate that the talk of the previous administration with respect to fiscal transparency, accountability, and fiscal discipline was just talk. The public purse was under constant threat during the administration. There's also the issue of IDB loans in the tens of millions of dollars which lack a clear strategy. I'll return to speak about that at another time.
Oh boy.
Madam Speaker, I do have a wish to give comfort and assurance to the Bahamian people that the team in the Ministry of Finance has already begun the process to address our unfunded liabilities, just as we have done in the past. This would include the creation of a sinking fund or funds to ensure that when obligations are due, we're able to pay them. It is for this reason the public will not see a line item for the $1 billion in the supplementary budget. But I wish to be clear that this administration does not intend to default on any of its obligations. This administration will address its financial obligations in an orderly and timely manner. We will not betray the trust of persons who have engaged in business with the Bahamian government in good faith. Madam Speaker, I also wish to address the talk in the public sphere about the $2.1 million decrease in the education budget. The decrease was the result of the findings of an audit to remove all inactive persons from the payroll. Other savings were identified due to the continuation of virtual learning, with certain expenses associated with in-person learning and thus not required for a portion of the school year. To be clear, the operations of the Ministry and the Department of Education were not impacted by this removal of inactive people from the payroll or the reduction in expenses due to virtual learning. The Ministry of Youth and Sports and Culture saw a $1.9 million decrease in its budget. That represented savings due to there being no John Canoe Parade this year. The Ministry of the Environment. The Ministry of Environment saw a $7.8 million decrease. That represents monies transferred to the ministry related to the Bahamas National Trust, as well as the transfer of the Bahamas Public Parks and Beaches Authority to the Ministry of Works and Utilities. So that's where you'll find those funds. The Ministry of Disaster and Preparedness Management. Well, you want to talk about this one? I come back. We'll talk about this one later. The Ministry of Disaster, Preparedness, Management, and Reconstruction no longer exists. I want to make it clear to the people of the Bahamas, and especially the people impacted by recent storms, we have not cut the nation's disaster response budget. Instead, the now defunct ministry's budget has been moved to the Office of the Prime Minister, where it can go towards the Bahamas Disaster Reconstruction Authority. As you can see, many of the so-called cuts that have been pointed out are simply instances in which the government has streamlined for efficiency or reallocated funds to achieve the same objective. Madam Speaker, in this budget cycle, we will see the launch of the Public Debt Advisory Committee to strengthen the nation's debt strategy. We'll see the reestablishment of a fully resourced revenue enhancement unit with the goal of minimizing tax avoidance and fraud. We'll also see the formation of the Revenue Policy Committee, comprised of our brightest fiscal and economic minds, to develop reforms related to revenue collection and policy. Our fiscal goals remain unchanged. As our term progresses, we will unveil further reforms to strengthen the country's revenue model. For the record, I would like to note that this debate on the supplementary budget will delay the tabling of the Fiscal Strategy Report. This report, which is mandated by the Fiscal Responsibility Act, will be tabled immediately after this debate and will provide a technical underpinning for our plan going forward. However, the discussion of revenue options to achieve the 25% revenue to GDP target that is settled in the supplementary budget will be deferred until the mid-year budget presentation. Madam Speaker, my administration's main objectives upon taking office were to provide immediate relief to the Bahamian people, wage a more effective battle against COVID-19, stimulate economic recovery, and address government's financial woes. This supplementary budget lays the foundations for us to make significant gains in each of these areas. But it accomplishes so much more than that. In order to significantly increase investments in small businesses, we launch a sovereign wealth fund and a national wealth fund. Improve our networking infrastructure, improve ease of doing business, upgrade our medical infrastructure, and invest in renewable energy, among other medium-term initiatives. We must successfully achieve progress on these immediate and short-term goals. This is not to mention the long-term goals that are dependent on sustained success and growth over the course of our five-year term. Madam Speaker, this supplementary budget begins the process of writing the course for a nation that has endured crisis after crisis, tragedy after tragedy. We will not remind Bahamians of how unprecedented these times are. The people already know that. We are not interested in merely highlighting the problems. We are interested in solutions.
Yes, sir.
We're not asking the Bahamian people to grade us on a curve just because we are governing during difficult times. Instead, we want to be judged by the results we deliver. Assess our performance based on the impact we have despite the times we are living in. That is the test of true leadership. Our objectives remain the same as always: to deliver a more fair and equitable society with opportunities for everyone. As the Deputy Prime Minister said during our campaign, and I think the member for Golden Isles often quotes, we want to make wealth more common in the Commonwealth. That is the vision we are striving for. And while there may be realities that place constraints on us at times, know that we are committed to getting this nation as close to that ideal as possible. This supplementary budget has within it the promise of a Bahamas that has serviced its debt and met its long-term revenue targets. Contained within this budget is the promise of a booming post-pandemic economy and robust social outreach and healthcare initiatives that will produce a healthier, more empowered population. Within this budget are the seeds of a diversified economy filled with employment and investment opportunities for all Bahamians. The budget before us today is a first step in that new direction. The basis of our mandate from the Bahamian people is contained in our Blueprint for Change, which incorporates the economic plan we published back in March. The speech from the throne contained our formal commitment to the policies via which our New Day administration will improve the lives of the Bahamian people and to build a better Bahamas for the future. We are guided by our Christian faith and an unshakable belief that we must always place first the lives and well-being of the people. Hence, this budget focuses on directly changing the lives of those in need. My faith has also taught me the importance of having a solid foundation in everything that I do. I'm reminded of the line in the Christian hymn, "On Christ the solid rock I stand." All of the ground is sinking sand. With this supplementary budget, this administration has established a solid foundation to guide the administration over the next 5 years. May God bless all the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And may God bless you. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the honourable member for Central Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To you, through you to the member for Cat Island.
People, representation that demonstrates compassion, that listens, that shows love and respect to the very people we've been called to serve. We are here to restore harmony, a sense of stability in our physical communities and stability in our fiscal commitments. As we aim to balance the budget and usher in a new day for our country, to usher in economic relief, and to restore to the Bahamian people a sense of hope that our future is promising, bright, and attainable. I wish to pause at this time to recognize the 61st anniversary of the first time women voted in this country. It was on November 26, 1962, that women joined equally into the electoral voice in this country. The University of the Bahamas' website is quoted as summarizing the women of the suffrage movement as fierce, intelligent, and determined. They had dreams of a Bahamas that went far beyond the enfranchisement of women. They wanted human rights and social services for every Bahamian and advocated the purposeful, informed community engagement of every citizen. Yes. We honor the legacy, sacrifice, and dedication of Mrs. Mary Ingram, Mrs. Eugenia Lockhart, Mrs. Georgiana K. Simonet, Mrs. Mabel Walker, Dame Albertha Isaacs, Dame Doris Johnson, and the thousands of women and men who supported them. While we've made progress and strides, I am reminded that there is much work to be done. As women continue to birth the future generations of this country, they must be equally at the table to birth new policies and new programs that will transform this country, better develop our people, especially our young people, and elevate our way of government and nation building. We can only get this right, do this right, when we work together. Reiterating the power of the number 2, when women and men come together, there is a duality of perspective and harmony in execution. There are great expectations for my sister colleagues as more women enter these honorable halls. However, I challenge us all, as women, as men, as mothers, as fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers, as leaders called to serve to equally advocate for the balancing of the scales, for the equal representation of men and women, for the equal protection by the law and all, especially for our children, and for equal opportunities for all. We are called equally to the great work left to be done. It would also be remiss of me if I did not recognize the Zonta Club of New Providence, who are here with us today. Madam Speaker, the Zonta Club has been extremely instrumental in bringing about awareness to gender-based violence as we recognize 16 days of activism to end such violence. Madam Speaker, those 16 days began on November 25th and ends on December 10th. And I want to publicly state my support for this initiative, as I too will be wearing my orange pin and white ribbon to bring about awareness. Madam Speaker, over the past few weeks, my LB team and I have been in Seabreeze continuing the work we've started and the work requested by constituents. Repairs to the roads, particularly potholes, removal of derelict vehicles, repairs and maintenance to the various parks, repairing key light fixtures, and working with the respective entities to ensure immediate action is given to these much-needed areas. I wish to thank my respective colleagues for their diligence in ensuring that these repairs are addressed swiftly. Seabreeze and I thank you. Madam Speaker, as I speak with my constituents, they share that when they look at the work this government has done in just the past 2 months, compared to the damage of the other administration did over the past 4 years, more tragically and more devastatingly over the past 2 years, it is truly night and day. I know the previous administration are pretty familiar with fishy deals. It would be remiss of me if I did not note some mind-boggling decisions made by them on a grander scale. For example, to offer a major cruise line a 150-year deal. Let me repeat, a 150-year lease on Paradise Island is the height of incompetence and disrespect for the Bahamian people. While governments ought to be open to working along with foreign investors and companies, selling our souls and selling our birthright is not on the table. That's right. In the deal, Madam Speaker, the rent for the prime property on Paradise Island annually is reported $140,000 per year. A mere $140,000 a year for land on Paradise Island. Madam Speaker, young professionals cannot even find housing for that price. Yet the former administration rented prime property on Paradise Island for $140,000 per year. Madam Speaker, there are many Bahamians who are livid about this land deal. Madam Speaker, there are young Bahamians, men and women, intelligent, cutting-edge Bahamians who are fighting to become wealthy in this country so that they can become established, so that they can be investors of their own nation, their own land that our forefathers and mothers fought for with blood, sweat, and tears. And the hardest frontier for Black Bahamians is economic wealth. And yes, Madam Speaker, we achieved majority rule. We broke through the economic barrier just a bit. But when we see deals such as this, we have to be angry. Before the former administration came into office, the late Dr. Miles Monroe warned us, saying that the 2017 election will either take us forward or backwards. Dr. Monroe knew exactly what he was saying because the former administration took us backwards. The deal and other disgraceful decisions robbed the Bahamian people blind. I want to make it clear, the former administration did not cause Hurricane Dorian. They did not cause the pandemic. But during these crises, we hold them responsible and accountable for treating Bahamians worse than second-class citizens. While Bahamians were stuck abroad, The F&M administration allowed a private plane to land because someone needed to bury their dog. I love animals, Madam Speaker, but there were people losing loved ones and not allowed to enter the country, needing to be with their families and not allowed in. They only knew how to help a selected few. While Bahamian couples had to postpone their wedding celebration, forfeit their deposits and abide by the regulations, they looked on and watched while the incompetent authority gave permission to foreign couples to have their weddings in large numbers. While the former DPM was enjoying VAT-free airplane parts, Bahamians were paying VAT on their car parts for vehicles they used to get around every single day. The former Minister of Tourism was able to bring in his washes here, cleans here, and presses here, industrial dryers and washers VAT-free, while Bahamians had to pay VAT on all washers and dryers for their household needs. The last government was thrown out of office, leaving the country facing 3 major crises.
The chair recognizes.
Thank you very much.
Member for Marco City.
I honestly did not want to interrupt the member for Seabreeze. I'm sorry, this is not urban renewal where you bully people before, so just serve it. Just serve it, okay? Okay? So,
Honorable members.
Madam Speaker, I believe this matter has been litigated in the House a number of times, and I did not want to interrupt, but a couple of things. One is, it was the PLP administration that placed the duty at the rate it was with respect to washers and dryers. And secondly, and secondly, at least allow me to finish the point, just so the public could be clear. Allow me to finish the point. And so the point of order is we're misleading the public when we give the impression that ministers made a decision on a matter that we got a budget. In the budget itself were the rates that you were referring to, member for Seabreeze. That's one. Secondly, it was on industrial, it was not on industrial washers and dryers. It was those that affected the homes. So it's misleading to give the public the impression that a benefit that was given was a benefit given to a business related to any minister. It is untrue. The PLP administration set those budget rates. The PLP administration. It was a budget that we merely continued, and it did not benefit the member that was falsely alluded to. It did not occur. Nor did it benefit the former minister of aviation, of finance. It did not benefit him. So 2 ministers were maligned incorrectly in this House, and I believe the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and Salvador have the facts and know that it is not correct.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Engliston.
Madam Speaker, I happen to have been sitting in the House during that budget debate, and the point that I had raised at the time is that because the Minister of Finance, because he made this argument, in fact he said he didn't read it, which I find shocking that a Minister of Finance would say he didn't read it. But at some point he knew it included airplane parts. And what his argument was that I said to him that he ought to have declared his interest because ethics requires it. And he did not do it. He got all upset and said, what are you saying? What are you saying? So whatever, who put it there, who ain't put it there, it was not denied that it was a benefit and that there was a conflict. And it was established, it was not declared in this parliament. And so, you know, I hear the argument of the PLP put it there, but it was an F&M budget that went through the F&M cabinet, where F&M, at least one F&M minister, did not deny that it had an impact on his own interests. And it was not declared to the parliament.
Thank you, honourable member.
Madam Speaker, I'm just wondering whether or not the member for Seabreeze would be prepared to withdraw the references to the minister with the minister with responsibility for tourism, since in fact, again, I maintain the argument that I presented. I don't want to relitigate it. I'm prepared to do so. If not, I ask that it be struck from the record because it is not so.
The chair recognizes the honourable member.
The member drew me into the debate on this issue, and if I could, I'm quite familiar with the issues. Right, the member for Freetown at the time never denied that he was getting a benefit from the movement of tax on washers, dryers. He never denied it. No, he never did. No, I remember specifically his issue was attempting to distinguish between industrial and household, one, and secondly, that look, this started with the PLP. The PLP gave him the benefits. So he was saying basically, you all did it, and we're doing it too. But it was not. He never denied that because he uses the parts that he can get could be used in his business as well. So it's not that he. And that's my recollection, and that's what happened.
The chair recognizes the honourable member.
So as not to occupy time on this matter, why don't you allow for the Hansard to reflect? Yes. We shall research, and we will come back to the issue.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable member for Seabreeze, when you come back, please present the facts.
I will do, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
The last government was thrown out of office.
Madam Speaker, I'm leaving it on the record while we get the Hansard.
Yes, it will be on the record, and she has said that she has researched, and then she brings the facts.
Madam Speaker, let me say this final thing, and I'll be very quick about this. What I am concerned about is, while beautifully delivered, what is happening is we're impugning the reputation of two persons who are not here and giving an impression that out of the thousands of items we have discussed, these two items, the F&M Minister-led administration has singled these out to benefit members. That is the tone and the tenor of the message. So my point is, it could be more palatable, as Engliston says, in terms of detail, paying attention to some details, but it cannot be right that you seek to give the impression that persons were working in their respective ministries seeking to find a personal benefit on some narrow items. It is unfair. And I believe that the member for Cat Island is aware that in wash houses, they are dealing with industrial machines rather than just the personal ones that are used.
Look, Madam Speaker, right, at the end of the day, right, the member is engaged in a business that concerns washing machines. That's the first thing. There was a benefit given to persons who would want to buy and or who was in the business of washing machines. So no. Well, listen. Look, what I'm saying, Speaker. So if you are attempting to conflate an allegation with an opinion, one could see that there's an opinion. My view is that he benefited, and I said that to him many times in this House, and he never denied it. All he attempted to do is say the benefits he was getting was also showered upon him by the PLP. That's how he denied it to me.
Yes. Honourable members. Honourable members, I have asked the honourable member for Seabreeze, to bring the facts to support what she just said. Okay? And we are moving on from this. And when she brings those facts and it is in support of what she is saying, then we will move forward.
Madam Speaker, I
have made a judgment. I have made a judgment, and I'm asking you now, honourable member, to please take your seat.
Madam Speaker,
let's move on.
Hasn't solved this issue.
I did not say the Hansard. I have asked the honourable member for Seabreeze to bring the facts, and when she brings the facts, then we will have that matter resolved. That is all I'm asking.
We'll have that today.
No, we will not have that today. We will have that in the next sitting of the House. I will give her the opportunity. Okay? Now that I have spoken, And let's respect what the chair would have just said. Member for Seabreeze, can you please continue?
The last government was thrown out of office, leaving the country facing three major crises: a health crisis, an economic crisis, and a governance crisis. Madam Speaker, I remember in the middle of the pandemic last year, the incompetent authority mandated an immediate shutdown and curfew without any notice for Bahamians. This action made it very clear that the F&M administration did not understand that all Bahamians do not live alike. Not everyone's economic circumstances are the same. There were some Bahamians who were able to stock up on food and medication, and there were others who relied on going out to work every day in order to find ways to live. Also, there were other families with special needs children and relatives who had daily medical needs to cater to. Madam Speaker, the former administration was out of touch with the needs and cries of the Bahamian people. I believe it's important that every Bahamian is able to understand the purpose and benefits of this bill. Like many young people would say, make it make sense. Firstly, there will be an extra dollar added to the national debt. In fact, this budget will begin reducing the high level of borrowing. Secondly, while we cannot engage in borrowing because the former administration did that in excess, this government is striking a balance to bring immediate relief. Thirdly, the F&M administration did not comply with the IMF to reveal to them the recipients of monies they borrowed. Meanwhile, this current government is waiting on the results of a detailed report which would give us an indication of exactly where we are fiscally. However, Madam Speaker, the budget will reintroduce the annual lump sum increments to civil servants, which was stopped by the former administration. Additionally, the promotions for government employees will be rolled out. Relief will also come to pensioners who will see an increase in their pensions. Relief will also come in the form of VAT reduction. Having the VAT rate across the board on all designated items gives the government the room it needs to lower the VAT rate to 10%. Our blueprint for change, an economic plan, highlighted VAT being reduced to 10%. That will no longer be a plan. It will now be in action. Therefore, relief to the Bahamian people from this new day government will come in many forms. Madam Speaker, had the Bahamian people left the incompetent authority in office, today would be quite different, with Bahamian people seeing an increase, possibly to 15% in VAT. Meanwhile, there's an increase to the budget in the Ministry of Public Service in order to fund pensions and gratuities for required civil servants.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Kalani.
I'm resistant to interrupt the member, and I would make most of my comments at the end of her speech, but I cannot allow the increase of VAT of 15% to remain on the record. I've said previously that was never our intention, but there are other matters that you've said that is totally incorrect, and I will address those.
For clarity, member for Seabreeze, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Did you indicate that, or did you say that you believed?
Possibly.
Possibly?
Yes.
Possibly. Okay. Thank you. You may proceed.
The Ministry of Finance has increased the budget to secure the extension of the unemployment program, and relief will be in the $500 lump sum coming in December. Madam Speaker, it was critical for the government in this supplementary budget to strike a prudent balance between providing immediate relief to the Bahamian people and staying away from more debt. Madam Speaker, we are delivering on our promises contained in our economic plan and the blueprint. We said we would do it, and as you can see, the new day started on day one. In keeping with the commitments we made to the Bahamian people, The New Day government began its free testing in the Family Islands, including North Eleuthera, the Berry Islands, and Inagua. And now plans for nationwide testing is being finalized. This New Day government has taken the bull by the horns, and we will do what we said we will do. The reality, Madam Speaker, is that the Bahamians need immediate tax relief, and that's exactly what this government is now delivering. Beyond managing the budget and jump-starting our economy, Madam Speaker, almost immediately after elections, the Honourable Member for Cat Island, Rumkey and San Salvador extended the time for curfew to 11:59 simply because there was no science as to having the earlier curfew. It just wasn't adding up. Madam Speaker, even now, there are Bahamians and business owners who speak to me and are happy with that one decision that got our economy moving again, allowing restaurants to open later, for service workers to pick up more hours, for beauty industry professionals to take on more clients, for working parents to have more time to run errands, go grocery shopping, and pick up essential items. And most recently, Madam Speaker, the straw market has reopened, allowing an opportunity for many Bahamians to provide for their families. Madam Speaker, Bahamians have to live. They need to be able to purchase groceries from the food store, put gas in their car, send their children to school, keep their lights on, pay their insurance, and keep a roof over their head. Madam Speaker, I wish to express the preamble of our Constitution, which makes it very clear that in our free and democratic sovereign nation, that no man, woman, or child should ever be slave or bondsman to anyone, or their labor exploited, or their lives frustrated by deprivation. Madam Speaker, for far too long, our people have been frustrated and deprived of essentials such as food, shelter, safe communities, education, healthcare, and connectivity. They've been frustrated by exclusion, discrimination, barriers to ownership, and lack of opportunities. What has made it worse? They've felt taken for granted, disrespected, and disregarded. While for many, a new day is just a catchy slogan, I believe it's a message of hope, a symbol of resilience, a reminder to hold on that better days are truly ahead. September 16, 2021 ushered in a new day for the Bahamas, an administration that with God's will return to many of us a sense of pride, dignity, and respect. An administration that will prioritize decisions that will move our nation forward. Broker deals that will widely benefit our nation, not just for the now, but for years to come. A government that will strike the balance. As I take my seat, Madam Speaker, I leave you all with the reminder and the importance of that number 2. May the prayer of St. Francis be our guiding principle as we restore balance and harmony to our nation. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, union. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. It is an honor that I second the bill on the 2021-2022 Supplementary Budget and Value-Added Tax Amendment number 2. Madam Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a second time and committed